What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the remote front office. Today we are covering the team with the 10th pick in the NBA draft this year, the Dallas Mavericks. Um, I would say it's safe to say that Dallas had a disappointing year by their standards. They were in the Western Conference Finals last year, and then this year didn't even make the playoffs. Actually, got fined for tanking their last game in order to make sure that they got their pick. But as for always, before we get started, make sure to leave a like, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We are only about a third of the way through the NBA now. Still have more teams to go. We still have lottery mock drafts to do. We still have trade ideas to do. There's still a lot of content to be had on this channel. But let's go ahead and start with who Dallas has as upcoming free agents. The biggest name, possibly one of the biggest names in this free agency class, Kyrie Irving. He is an unrestricted free agent. I can see this going one of two ways, right? Um, you let Kyrie walk just because of the history of the last couple of years, and he goes to wherever he goes to, Los Angeles or whatever team comes up in rumors over these next couple of months, right? You keep Kyrie, you sign him to the long-term extension that he's been looking for. And then it goes down in fire, and Luka requests a trade in 2 years because Kyrie is Kyrie. He only plays about 50% of his games. You realize you have probably one of the worst defensive backcourts in the NBA, while one of the best offensive backcourts. They just don't mesh well. And then, of course, Luka requests a trade. Personally, what I am doing is I am begging and pleading that the Lakers are willing to do a sign-in trade. I would assume D'Angelo Russell would have to be in the deals, like a dual sign-in trade would be my guess. I just don't, off the top of my head, see anybody else willing to do a sign-in trade for Kyrie. Um, so LA is probably going to be your best bet. Otherwise, I'm probably letting Kyrie walk. I understand what Kyrie is as a basketball player. I understand what Kyrie is as an offensive player. However, when playing with Luka, I feel like you need two-way players around him. He is your primary ball handler, so you're treating him as a point guard. With Kyrie out there, you're either putting Kyrie at the shooting guard or putting Luka at the shooting guard. And I feel Kyrie is too much of a negative on defense for the most part, unless he's playing James Harden in a revenge game, apparently. I just feel like he's too much of a negative on defense for this team to hit the goals it wants to hit, right? Next guy's gonna be Christian Wood. He is an unrestricted free agent, unless he's willing to take a pretty sizable pay cut. I'm not keeping Christian Wood. For very similar reasons to Kyrie, actually. I don't think Christian Wood fits a winning culture. I don't think Christian Wood could be a positive or even just a net zero on the defensive end. Um, I always think he's gonna be a negative defensively. I think he spent too long in non-winning cultures for this culture in particular to get him out of his non-winning ways. As of right now, I think he's probably a backup center. I don't see him as a starting center in this league, or possibly like a backup power forward. I don't see him as a winning caliber player in this league. So I'm letting him walk. You didn't really give up anything for him. You gave up essentially the end of your bench and picked 28 last year, so I would have no problems letting him walk. Next guy is Dwight Powell. I am bringing Dwight Powell back. I like what Dwight Powell does for this team. I like his defensive attitude. I like his effort. I like his ability to roll. And I think obviously you have to keep some center on the roster, right? Unless you're going out for somebody. But personally, I think Dwight Powell, even if he does end up being a backup in like the second or third year of that deal, I do think Dwight Powell does need to stay around this team. The next guy is going to be Markieff Morris. Letting him walk. I honestly didn't even know he was on the roster until I was looking up the team to do this video. I don't think he's really a culture guy. I mean, I don't see it out of him personally. So I'm letting him walk. He's just at the tail end of his career. Somebody will pay him a couple of bucks to stay on the end of their bench. Theo Pinson, I'm also letting walk. Again, we're clearing up a lot of room at this point. We're clearing up roster spots. Theo doesn't really play. He's really just a bench guy. I don't see it. I'm letting him walk. One guy I am keeping around though is Frank Ntilikina. I think for the value that you're going to have to sign him for, he can do what he's supposed to do, right? He's not going to be an offensive anything, right? But he's going to be a competent defensive player that can guard guards, and at least for stretches, having him out there next to Luka, um, I like that idea. Maybe not, probably not a playoff player in the rotation, but I think as far as like a regular season, we need to stop at the end of this game. I think having Frank on the roster is at least worth it because he's going to be on a minimum deal. Um, and then the last guy is Justin Holiday. Unless you're getting him for, I'm assuming you're getting him for a minimum. If you want him for the veteran presence, possible shooting, keep him around. Otherwise, I would say just let him walk, take the roster spot, and move on with your day. Team needs. You need a secondary ball handler, Jalen Brunson. Um, I understand that Luka's going to have the ball 90% of the time, as a lot of these guys that think the game faster than everybody else does. Your Jokic's, your LeBrons, those sort of guys, right? They're going to have the ball a lot. Harden's heliocentric offense when he was in Houston. I just think to give a team a different look, especially when you get into the playoffs, you've seen with guys like LeBron, he had Kyrie next to him, right? You've seen it with guys like Giannis. He has the ball a lot, not maybe as much as some of these guys, but he has the ball a lot. Chris Middleton's the one closing games. It's just, even if a guy has the ball a lot, he still needs that secondary creator. You can't have guys that are just a bunch of cones, right? That's just not going to be productive success. Defense, this team, not this year, but the year before, when Jason Kidd first came in, made significant improvements defensively, right? They showed effort. They showed a will to play. They were a really solid defensive team. Not the case anymore, right? I Part of that probably is Dorian Finney-Smith leaving. Part of that was just probably a general regression, and maybe teams figuring out stuff from the Jason Kidd system. But I would like to see them at least try and get closer to that mark, because I think personally it's just where this team obviously doesn't have all the talent in the world, but you've seen it from teams like Miami. If you have a good culture, if you have a good defense, if you understand how the game's being played, especially with the pace Luka plays at, you don't have to run and gun. So then, therefore, defensive players can help you slow down possessions, right? Um, a center, obviously, the JaVale McGee experiment hasn't worked. He's just a shell of himself, I guess. I don't really know exactly what's wrong with JaVale since he came to Dallas. He was really good in Phoenix, I thought. But he's not quite that player anymore, right? I guess at this point. So you need a center to come in. You tried it with Porzingis. You tried it with JaVale. You tried it with Christian Wood. You need a center at this point for Luka, right? And the last one, that's probably the most far-fetched part of this. If you really want to contend, unless you're the Miami Heat again, you need that second star level player, right? Denver, for example, maybe doesn't have the true second star, but Jamal Murray's close, right? He's at bare minimum like an all-star potential. You could see him on an all-NBA ballot, right? You need that level of a guy for Dallas. But the thing is I think he needs to be a two-way player, right? Kyrie at times, sure. He can be that all-NBA caliber guy, right? But I just think that this player, because you need the defense on this team so badly, I think that it has to be a two-way guy. Like a Paul George type guy, Jaylen Brown type guy. Those sort of two-way players that can still create a little bit. Jaylen Brown, lesser so, but still can have 20 plus while playing defense, while doing the other things that Luka doesn't do well, right? Projected cap space as of right now is $21 million. Obviously, this does not factor in the Kyrie Irving decision. This doesn't factor in the Dwight Powell extension, Christian Wood decision, all those sort of decisions. This is just hypothetical cap space at this time. Targets. The first target I have for them is Brook Lopez. Again, if you're still wanting to compete now, I like what Brook can bring. As far as he has the option to pop with Luka, so Luka can take the advantage of smaller players. He has the advantage to roll. Obviously, he's not going to be a lob threat, but as a post-up guy, you saw what he did in Brooklyn all those years ago. He's a really solid post guy, really solid post game, and he's a good defender. He's not going to be necessarily the switch type guy. He's not going to be the really athletic shot blocker, but he's smart. He knows how to defend himself well. He anchors himself well. I just think, all in all, I think he would be a really good option if he is to leave Milwaukee. Next guy I have is Mason Plumlee. A little bit on the cheaper side, probably more of a backup. But again, I'm just trying to solve the center problem at this point. And Mason Plumlee has proven in select minutes he can be a solid center, right? He's obviously not going to be a top 15 center, not a top 10 center. But I think overall he could be a solid guy to give you quality minutes overall. Andre Drummond has a player option. Again, he proved as a backup at least that he's solid in select minutes. I'd be interested to see if he goes back into a starting role, how that looks for Dallas. I don't know if he's quite the vertical spacer he used to be just because of age. But I do think as far as offensive rebounds, rebounding in general, he still is very intelligent as far as the rebounding part of it goes. And I think just as the screen setter for Luka, dive threat for Luka, I think he could be a very interesting option. A swing big option that I think will end poorly and probably in flames, Russell Westbrook. I don't think Russell Westbrook's going to get 20. I don't think he's going to get 18. I think he's probably the 10 to 12 range, maybe. So I think for the budget you have, if you do trade Kyrie and say it's somewhere that can give you other pieces, right? Say it's somewhere that can give you wings or a center or something along those lines, right? Then, therefore, Russell Westbrook can come in, play next to Luka. He's shown he can play next to stars with the Clippers, right? You can have him as a screen setter for Luka. You can have him as the ball handler for Luka, give Luka post touches and mismatches. You can have him while Luka's sitting. He's able to lead that break and kind of switch your team into a different form of offense where you're picking up the pace a little bit, right? And I just think for the value contract he's going to be on, he's not going to be on the $43 million he was on before, right? You're looking like a $10 million guy. I think for that value, I think he's worth it. Another guy, Bruce Brown, out of Denver. He's a player option. I recommend him for a lot of teams. I've liked what I've seen out of Bruce Brown this season. He's a good spacer. He's a good cutter. He's a very instinct cutter, right? He's a good defender, which, again, you need around Luka. I don't know about the volume three-point shooting. I like his three-point shooting in spurts. And I think just as that wing defender, I think he's somebody that you can get and won't take all of your cap space, right? Another guy I have for them, kind of more on the understanding long-term side of things, is Kobe White. He is a restricted free agent. Probably would take almost all their cap space. It could also be like a sign and trade option as well. But I think Kobe has proven over the last couple years in Chicago that he can do multiple different roles, right? He can be your spot up guy. He can handle a little bit defensively. He can bring up the ball for you in spots, right? He can be that primary ball handler, secondary ball handler. I just think as he develops, I think you could get him on a bargain contract for right now because I don't think Chicago knows what they're doing right now. So I think he would be more of a long-term play rather than an immediate play, right? Another guy I have is Dennis Schroeder. He showed a little bit in these playoffs as far as defensively. He's still a good secondary ball handler. I would picture him more as an off-the-bench guard rather than next to Luka guard. But I think for potentially like $5 million or so, I think it would be worth the swing on him, again, to steadily improve your team, right? Another guy I have for them is Javon Carter. Kind of a similar thing. Again, these aren't home run swings because I just don't think the home run swing's out there without a Kyrie sign and trade. I don't see them having the assets to go get somebody like a Mikal Bridges or anybody like that, right? I don't Jaylen Brown. I just don't see them having the assets to get it done. So that's why I'm picturing more of you're building around Luka with your current roster that you have. So Javon Carter, again, can play spot minutes as a starter, bench guy, intelligent, not going to make a whole bunch of mistakes, shooting at times, good playmaker, decent defender, just that all-around role guy. And the last guy I have for that slot even is Gabe Vincent. Gabe Vincent has proven in these playoffs, I think, that he is a competent player. He could be a starting level guard in this league. Decent defender, decent shooter, decent playmaker, just decent, right? Not going to blow you away at any point in time, but I think as a collective, he's an improvement from the backups that you currently had on this roster. The last thing I will kind of say about this is they have pick 10. I don't know if they're shopping it right now. We haven't heard much as far as trade rumors for Dallas as far as the pick goes. I would assume so, because the way this league works right now, Luka is on a supermax, but you have about 2 years before you start to get to the constant rumors of Luka's upset with this organization. He doesn't feel like they're accommodating him. This, that, the third. He requests a trade, right? You're getting closer and closer to that time. I understand you tried the Porzingis deal, you tried to swing big, didn't necessarily work. Now you have to move on to plan. What are we at? C at this point? D? Whatever we're on at this point. And I just think you trade Kyrie, see what you can get for Kyrie. You bring in some of these guys that I mentioned, you run it back, and you hope that eventually at some point something clicks, right? You hope you essentially get a Dirk's 2011, a Mavericks 2011 Dirk run, right? That's essentially what you're hoping for out of this team. You surround him with good enough role players, and as Luka develops, he transcends enough to get you guys into a finals run, right? That's just essentially what you're hoping for with this team. But that's my thoughts on the Dallas Mavericks. Leave your guys' thoughts below. I'll take a look at them, and I appreciate you guys coming through. I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.